PR Connections Radio presents.
Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele, and we have another good show planned for everyone watching all around the world as we're going to be breaking down the 2024 NHL All-Star Game. The rosters came out very recently, so we're going to be taking the time to kind of break down the rosters, kind of talk about some snubs as well, including a Vegas Golden Knight, who your host, Ian Rachiele, is going to make an argument should be in the All-Star Game. So that's going to be a discussion we're going to talk about here on the show tonight for Vegas Hockey Hub. So until we get into that, go to PRConnectionsRadio.com. Check out all the amazing content on the network. We have about a dozen shows that are putting out content every single day. So go to PRConnectionsRadio.com and check out all of the content on there. Also go to the YouTube channel and subscribe. That helps out our channel much. Our network, once again, uploads every single show onto the YouTube channel, including Vegas Hockey Hub. And if you want to go to our social medias at Vegas Hockey Hub, if you want to like and share to all of your friends all around the world, I highly encourage doing so. And if you want to follow us on all social media platforms at Vegas Hockey Hub. And also follow me on social media as well at Ian J. Rachiele. So getting into this NHL All-Star Game, there's a lot of good topics and some good conversations we could be talking about. And, you know, with these rosters, I'm kind of just going to break it down, you know, not really in any order, but just going to kind of go from left to right and talk about some notable players who have gone into the All-Star Game. Now, as you see right here on the screen, you have all of the original 32 players who were put into the NHL All-Star Game. And once again, one player on every single team was put onto the All-Star Game. So starting from left to right, you have David Pastrnak. He has definitely been the representative from the Boston Bruins. Made a lot of sense when you really stop and analyze it. This guy, David Pastrnak, he has been one of the best, if not the best goal scorer you've seen over the Boston Bruins over the last couple of years. I mean, this guy has led this team, done a lot of good in Boston. And heck, even his stats this year have just been remarkable. I mean, this guy already has over 25 goals on the year, over 60 points. So yeah, David Pastrnak definitely doing a very good job out there in Boston. And then we have somebody later on who we're going to talk about who came from the Boston Bruins. Next, you have Rasmus Dahlin from the Buffalo Sabres. This guy, really skilled defenseman, really coming into his own. Him, Owen Power, a really good young defenseman out there in Buffalo. And he was the right choice for the Buffalo Sabres. I mean, Rasmus Dahlin, he has done a really good job out there in Buffalo. And even when you sit there and analyze his stats and look at what he has done in Buffalo this season, this guy done relatively well. I mean, over about a dozen goals, a little under 40 points on the year for Buffalo. But more importantly, he has been consistent as a Buffalo Sabre. I mean, this guy has played almost 400 games at this point since going first overall back in 2018. So definitely a good pick by Buffalo to be their all-star representative. Carolina Hurricanes, Sebastian Aho, he has definitely become a superstar out there in Carolina. And there's really not much more I can say about him that hasn't been said already. And his stats this year have done pretty well out there in Carolina, despite what they're doing in the regular season. Carolina taking a little bit of a step back this year. But he has been a bright spot, 15 goals and around 50 points already on the year for Carolina for Sebastian Aho. The Columbus Blue Jackets, I'm going to be brutally honest. If it wasn't for the one representative for every single team, I really don't know who could have came from the Columbus Blue Jackets. I mean, this is a Blue Jackets team that just has struggled all year long. They have been one of the worst teams in all of hockey. I mean, last in the Metro, a lot of people expected that, no doubt. But, you know, when it comes to Columbus Blue Jackets, Boone Jenner, he has been a really good player over the last couple of years for Columbus. He has been a solid guy, no doubt. But I'm kind of wondering, could there really realistically been anybody else from this team? I mean, Boone Jenner only 18 points on the year. He doesn't even lead the team in points. I mean, Johnny Gaudreau, obviously, who they big free agent signing a couple of off seasons ago, but even him, he only has 7 goals on the year. Orwenski, solid defenseman, but only 25 points on the year. So, unfortunately, with Columbus, if there wasn't for the one player for every single team rule, I doubt Columbus could have gotten somebody. Maybe the rookie, maybe he could have gotten in. But like I said, Columbus Blue Jackets, unfortunately, someone had to be at the All-Star game. Boone Jenner, only 18 points on the year. He got the nod for Columbus. The Arizona Coyotes is interesting, and I'm going to explain why. The Columbus Blue Jackets, at least, with them, you can make some arguments for some other players. But for the Arizona Coyotes, the upstart Arizona Coyotes, who have had a good start to the season so far, not only is Clayton Keller in the All-Star game, which is a good move. Clayton Keller has been a really good player this year, but you can make a valid argument that Connor Ingram, one of really good goaltenders, should be an All-Star as well. I mean, Connor Ingram, he had a shutout against the Vegas Golden Knights back in November, but that's not even including that. Connor Ingram has had a breakout season this year in Arizona. So depending on injuries and everything that's going on, I say that Connor Ingram is a snub for the Arizona Coyotes. Clayton Keller definitely deserved to get in, considering the stats he has had this year. But make no mistake about it, their goaltender in Connor Ingram has done relatively well this season out there in Arizona. Like I said, 15-8 and about a goals against average of 2.5 for Connor Ingram. And then Clayton Keller, his statistics this year, he has about 17 goals and around 40 points on the year for Arizona. Very well deserved. And I'm going to have to give a shout out to Logan Cooley as well, 20 points on the year. Not bad for the rookie. Speaking of rookies, the number 1 overall pick from this draft, the guy who is the next Connor McDavid. Of course, we're talking about Connor Bedard, him being the representative from the Chicago Blackhawks. And let's just be real, nobody else was going to come from Chicago. I mean, Connor Bedard being their representative was a no-brainer when you consider the rest of the roster. I mean, if Connor Bedard wasn't playing in Chicago, this team would be almost unwatchable this season. I mean, last in the Central, this team really not doing much in terms of good. But yeah, Connor Bedard, no doubt, being the representative for the Chicago Blackhawks. And you know what? Even looking at his stats, it is leaps and bounds better than almost everybody else on the Blackhawks roster this year. I mean, 15 goals, around 40 points for Connor Bedard in his rookie season. I think really the only person that might compare is maybe Dickinson, but even then, he has like 10 plus points over him and Connor Bedard. So I will say for Connor Bedard, the easy choice there in Chicago. The Anaheim Ducks, Frank Vatrano. I mean, this guy has definitely been the right pick for the Anaheim Ducks. I mean, Troy Terry, you do have Trevor Zegras, but at the end of the day, Frank has been the right choice. And, a lot of people are going to make the Italian jokes. I mean, a lot of people are making Soprano jokes when he was getting selected, but he definitely deserved his spot in the All-Star game this year for the Anaheim Ducks. I mean, when it comes to a guy like Frank, he has earned that spot considering the stats that he has had this year. So far, Frank, 21 goals already on the year and around 40 points for him in Anaheim. Definitely deserved the All-Star nod. The Calgary Flames, Elias Lindholm, he has done a relatively good job. Now, this isn't on the same level as Columbus. I mean, they definitely do have someone that deserves to be there. But the Calgary Flames, it felt kind of obvious that Lindholm would be the guy, considering the rest of the roster. I mean, when it comes to the Calgary Flames, Elias Lindholm has been so far the best player on this team. I mean, 8 goals on the year, around 28 points. You could make somewhat of an argument for Nazem Kadri if you wanted to, but Lindholm getting there does make sense. Detroit Red Wings, the team has kind of been an upstart so far. You have Alex DeBrincat as a representative. And you know what? When it comes to Alex DeBrincat, this has definitely been a smart choice. After acquiring him in the past offseason from Ottawa, he has been leaps and bounds the best player in Detroit. Already at 40 points on the year, 17 of them being goals. Alex DeBrincat has done a stand-up job in Detroit. Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond, there are also a few notable mentions in Detroit, but Alex DeBrincat has been the right choice in Detroit. Now, Florida having Sam Reinhart is a little bit interesting. Now, later on, when we get to the fan vote, this conversation is not going to matter. But when it was announced that Sam Reinhart was going to be the representative for Florida, it was a little bit questionable. I mean, Alexander Barkov has been the longtime stay of the Florida Panthers. 45 points on the year for Barkov. Maybe could get in as a replacement at the All-Star game. But then when you actually consider Sam Reinhart, who has a whopping 55 points on the year, that he has definitely earned that spot. But yeah, Reinhart and Barkov were kind of the two guys battling back and forth as the best player in Florida. And their goalie, we'll talk about him later. The New Jersey Devils, who I think has been a little bit of a disappointment this year, but let's get away from that. Jack Hughes, their superstar in New Jersey. He has been arguably their best player, him or Jesper Bratt. They have been the two best front runners for New Jersey. And once again, an all-star nod for the guy who's not even 24 years old yet in Jack Hughes, a former first overall pick. And for a guy like Jack Hughes, who has 15 goals and 45 points on the year for New Jersey, he is definitely their face of the franchise and a superstar in New Jersey with Jack Hughes. The New York Islanders are also an interesting team to really talk about. Matt Barzal with his all-star nod. He definitely deserves it. 45 points on the year with a dozen goals to boot. And, this really just isn't down to having nobody else there. Maybe Dobson if they had to get a defenseman. But overall, Barzal, definitely the right pick there for the New York Islanders, as you'll see right here. The Colorado Avalanche, they have so many players that get added with the All-Star vote that I'm going to get back to McKinnon later on. But yeah, the Colorado Avalanche, what a trio we'll talk about later on. The Dallas Stars, Jake Ottinger, who has been doubtably one of the best goalies in all of hockey. If you want to put him up in the Vezina conversation, I think you can make a valid argument for it. As Jake Ottinger this year, 12-8-2. This guy has save percentage around 90%. This guy has been arguably one of the best goalies taken since Dallas took him in the first round in 2017. So kind of a no-brainer here. I guess Roberson, if you really wanted to, if you wanted to get a forward, maybe him for Dallas. But overall, kind of the smart move here. Edmonton Oilers, Connor McDavid. No doubt here. Connor McDavid is an all-star captain for the Edmonton Oilers. So if you're the captain of the All-Star game, there's no doubt you were going to be selected. And he has a teammate that we're going to talk about later on when we get to the All-Star vote. The LA Kings having Cam Talbot, I'm not going to lie to you, is a little bit interesting. Now, not that Cam Talbot doesn't deserve it, because he does. But you could make an argument for Kevin Fiala. Kevin Fiala has been by far one of the best players all year for the LA Kings. This guy only has 10 goals, but he has near 40 points on the year for the LA Kings. I know Adrian Kemp, you have Anze Kopitar. There are some good players that came from the LA Kings, but Cam Talbot getting the vote. Now, his statistics for LA this year, 14, 10, and 5, but he has a save percentage around 92%, which is very good for a goaltender. Now, the Montreal Canadiens, their representative is former Golden Knights first-round pick and their current captain, Nick Suzuki. And this is once again a no-brainer pick for the Montreal Canadiens. 12 goals on the year, around 40 points for Nick Suzuki. And outside of maybe Cole Caulfield, he has been the best player in Montreal over the last couple of years. Ottawa, a no-brainer here as well, as Brady Tkachuk gets the nod. Tim Stützle, he could have definitely gotten the vote as well if you wanted to put him for an honorable mention. But Brady Tkachuk getting the award for the Ottawa Senators, getting the nod for the All-Star game, it just makes a lot of sense when you understand that he has 18 goals already on the year for Ottawa, leads the team in goals. The New York Rangers, Igor Shesterkin, he has been no doubtably the main reason why the New York Rangers are winning games. 17-10, goals against average of 2.8. He has been by far a mainstay in New York. I mean, after King Henrik left, they were trying to find a goalie to replace him, and they finally have in Igor Shesterkin. And Jonathan Quick as our backup goalie, I have to give him a little bit of credit as well. But in terms of the All-Star nod, he was going to get it. I mean, Tammy Panarin, he normally vetoes and doesn't even go to the All-Star game anyway. But I have to give him a little bit of honorable mention. 27 goals already on the year for our Tammy Panarin, the bread man. But he wouldn't go to the All-Star game. So Igor Shesterkin, their goalie, gets in. Travis Kaserny for the Philadelphia Flyers, their representative. Now, there is a little bit of back and forth here on who really should have came for the Philadelphia Flyers. Some people like Travis, and his stats this year, 21 goals, 40 points, definitely does make a valid argument. Travis Senheim, as a defenseman, could have also been an argument, but I'm just happy the goaltending was not considered here. Carter Hart, in my opinion, has not been as great as advertised. I mean, he's a good goalie, but he hasn't been as great as he needs to be. So Kaserny or Senheim, it does make sense that those two were considered for Philadelphia, but Kaserny got it overall. The Minnesota Wild, Kirill Kaprizov, he has definitely done a fantastic job for the Minnesota Wild, has become their franchise player out there in Minnesota. Now, I know Philippe Gustafson, Marc-Andre Fleury, those two goalies out there in Minnesota. I know some people here in Vegas wanted Fleury to be in the All-Star game for his last season, but unlike the NBA and MLB, they normally don't give out All-Star games for guys in their last year. So I will say for the Minnesota Wild, Kaprizov does make sense. Him already having over a dozen goals on the year, around 40 points. He has done a good job. Philip Forsberg for the Nashville Predators. He has done a relatively good job this year. He has actually been one of the mainstays out there in Nashville over the last couple of years. And I will say about Philip Forsberg, is there really anybody else they could have considered? I mean, maybe Roman Josi, because once again, a mainstay at defense. But I don't really see anyone else that could have came from Nashville outside of Philip Forsberg. I know Juuse Soros, he is someone that's a really good goaltender, but I don't think he could have been there as well. So Philip Forsberg makes a lot of sense. 22 goals and almost 50 points on the year heading into the All-Star era. The San Jose Sharks, somebody had to be in the All-Star game. Tomas Hertl does make sense here because at the end of the day, is there anybody else that could have came from San Jose? Like, just being honest with everyone watching, I don't know anybody else. Maybe Mikael Granlund, maybe him, but it wouldn't have been the goaltenders. The defense has been weak for the majority of the year. So, unfortunately, this is just similar to Columbus earlier in the show. Somebody had to be in the All-Star game. So, Tomas Hertl, who has about a dozen goals and around 29 points on the year, he'll get the nod for San Jose. The Seattle Kraken, Oliver Bjorkstrand, he has definitely been the pick there. Now, I know a lot of people are saying Vince Dunn could have gotten in there. And there are people who are going to make a valid argument there because Vince Dunn leads the team in a lot of categories statistically. But Oliver Bjorkstrand, 12 goals and around 40 points on the year for Seattle. Vince Dunn, 8 goals but 27 assists for the Seattle Kraken. So depending on what you care about, offense or defense, if you care more about the defense, Vince Dunn could have gotten a vote. If you care more about offense, Bjorkstrand, he could have gotten in. If you're a goaltending type of guy, Joey Decord did a fantastic job in the last month, including that shutout against Vegas in the Winter Classic. But yeah, Seattle definitely had a bunch of options, but at the end of the day, Oliver Bjorkstrand was their pick. Tampa Bay Lightning, Nikita Kucherov, the former NHL MVP, is the representative out there in Tampa Bay. And, there's a no doubt, no-brainer pick. It is Nikita Kucherov. Let me just give you the main reason why. In only 42 games this year, Nikita Kucherov has 28 goals and a whopping 72 points on the year. To give you some context, his next closest teammate is 44 points with point. The pick in Tampa Bay is an understatement. Like I said, 72 points on the year for Kucherov. His next teammate is 44 points. I mean, really putting it into perspective, he could make an argument for MVP, considering he leads the entire NHL in points out there in Tampa Bay. Toronto Maple Leafs, they have so many guys on the roster. I'll get back to them later. But the captain of the All-Star game, Austin Matthews, of course, he's going to come from Toronto. Now, you have the face of the NHL for so many years, Sid the Kid, Sidney Crosby, coming from Pittsburgh. Now, I'm not going to try to sit here and say he doesn't deserve the vote, but here's what I will say. Watching the Pittsburgh Penguins this year, Jake Gunzel really should have gotten the vote in Pittsburgh. Jake Gunzel this year, 19 goals and a whopping 46 points on the year. Sidney Crosby, about 26 goals and around 45 points. So regardless of how you feel about Sidney Crosby, some people love him, some people hate him. But when it comes to Sidney Crosby, him having a name recognition, him being the face of the franchise for so many years, he was going to get the nod over Jake Gunzel. But I will point out on the Eastern Conference, if there is someone who gets hurt or if someone has to be replaced, do not be surprised if Jake Gunzel gets a nod or gets a little bit of a opportunity there, considering how well he has done this year. Washington Capitals, I'm not even going to try to sit here and laugh at this. Tom Wilson shouldn't have been the All-Star. Everybody knows that Alex Ovechkin should be the All-Star representative for the Washington Capitals. The only reason why Ovi did not get it is because he normally doesn't go to the All-Star game to begin with. Like every year or every other year, Alex Ovechkin skips the All-Star game. He vetoes the All-Star game. So even though Alex Ovechkin leads the team in points on the year, they brought in Tom Wilson. Now, I personally think Dylan Strome should have gotten in over Tom Wilson, but that's just me. The St. Louis Blues, you have Robert Thomas. Once again, a safe pick. I mean, he's done relatively well for the St. Louis Blues. And I will say Robert Thomas doing a stand-up job this year, 44 points on the year. The Winnipeg Jets getting Connor Hellebuyck, arguably a Vezina Trophy favorite this year in Connor Hellebuyck. I know that a lot of people are complaining in Winnipeg that they have the best record, but yet they only have one All-Star representative. And you know what? It is what it is. I'm not going to sit here and try to deny it. Mark Scheifele maybe could be considered as a replacement, but that's about it. The Vancouver Canucks have about 5 players on here, so I'll get back to them in a second. But Quinn Hughes as the representative. And then your Vegas Golden Knights is Jack Eichel. And Jack Eichel definitely deserved it. Don't get me wrong, he definitely deserved it. But let me present an argument to you. Let me present a little bit of an argument to you about the Vegas Golden Knights. Jack Eichel this year, 19 goals and 44 points on the year and only 42 games. He has done an amazing job. He's done a fantastic job. But Mark Stone actually leads in points with 44. Mark Stone is averaging a point per game. I know Jack Eichel, because he got hurt, is averaging a little bit more than a point per game. But Mark Stone, the captain of the Vegas Golden Knights, has 15 goals and 44 points on the year. And in the goaltender department, a lot of people forget that Adin Hill led the NHL in goals against average before he got hurt. I don't want anyone to stop and forget that Adin Hill, before he got hurt in 15 games this year, went 10, 2, and 2 for your Vegas Golden Knights. I don't want anyone to forget that is when Adin Hill was in net for your Vegas Golden Knights, he had a goals against average of 1.9 in the NHL. For context, Logan Thompson has a goals against average of 2.7 on the year. So Adin Hill leading the NHL in goals against average of a 1.9 on the year and a save percentage above 92%. To say that Adin Hill could actually be the All-Star candidate, I actually have a valid argument for it. In fact, I could probably make a whole show about it if need be. But when it comes to Adin Hill or Jack Eichel or Mark Stone, at the end of the day, Jack Eichel was chosen by your Vegas Golden Knights. Now, when him being injured, will he come back? Will he eventually be at the All-Star game? We'll have to wait and see on that. But Jack Eichel being your representative, it was not Mark Stone and not Adin Hill. Now, the NHL All-Star fan vote was in effect. And the winners of your All-Star fan vote, the Boston Bruins goaltender Jeremy Swayman has done a really amazing job for Boston, has helped them get to one of the best records in hockey once again. You have Alexander Gorgiev, who has done a relatively good job in Colorado this year, and alongside him was his Colorado Avalanche teammate in Cale Makar. Leon Draisaitl joining his teammate in Connor McDavid out there in Edmonton. And then you had Bob, Sergei Bobrovsky, out there in Florida, doing a relatively good job in net out there in the Eastern Conference. And then you had the second round of the fan vote, and this was all Canadian dominated out there in the fan vote. From the Vancouver Canucks, you have Brock Besser, Patrick Demko, Elias, and JT that came from the Vancouver Canucks. Makes sense. The Vancouver Canucks have the best record in the Pacific Conference. And the Western Conference Pacific Division, Vancouver Canucks doing a good job. The Toronto Maple Leafs fans also showed out as the Toronto Maple Leafs, Morgan Riley, William Nylander, and Mitch Marner joined Austin Matthews at the All-Star game for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, as we get back to the All-Star game, I want to know to everybody watching around the world, how does it look for you? You know, when it comes to this All-Star game, is there any shockers to you? Is there anybody who surprises you as an All-Star here in Vegas? I mean, as they're going to be heading to Toronto, going to Canada, going to Scotiabank Arena, is there anybody who surprises you as an All-Star? Because like I said, the Boston Bruins having David Pastrnak and Jeremy Swayman, that is good for people out there in Boston. You had the trio in McKinnon, Makar, and Gorgiev out there in Colorado. They have one of the best records in hockey. That makes a lot of sense. You have the duo of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl out there in Edmonton. And then in Florida, you had Sam Reinhart and Sergei Bobrovsky coming out of there. Now, I do want to make this announcement as we have about a minute left on the air. The Vegas Hockey Hub, when it gets to the draft situation, because the NHL All-Star Game is going to have a draft on February 1st. So what we're going to do on February 1st is something a little bit different. We, on Vegas Hockey Hub, are going to do our own version of a NHL All-Star Draft here on Vegas Hockey Hub. That's going to be a lot of fun. We're having some good back and forth. We're going to try to engage everyone watching around the world here on Vegas Hockey Hub. But yeah, we're going to do our own version of a NHL All-Star draft. We're going to have all the players on there, and we're going to try to draft a team here on PR Connections Radio. So until next time, I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. Continue watching hockey. Go support junior hockey, and go Knights, go.